My voice is a little more weak than I thought it would be, but I still need to record. So, this is not going to be a popular video. It's almost a girlhood experience to read through, or if you're younger than 23, watch the entirety of the Dollenganger Saga. Some of us were introduced to the series as young as 11, while others were introduced to the series as young teens. Either way, most girls I know, even those who later became trans men, have at least heard of the infamous series. What if I told you that I see a huge similarity between that series' main couple and the couple of the main character and Caleb from Love and Deepspace? Hear me out, please. Real quick, if you don't know who I am, hi, I'm Avery, and this is my channel where the backgrounds of my videos are time lapses of me drawing like creepshow art without the stalking, while I yap over top of it about whatever I want, D'Angelo Wallace style. If you like the video, be sure to give it a like and share it around so I can make bank. Leave a comment telling me whatever you want, and subscribe for more unhinged takes on media you love. You can also follow my social medias linked in the description below. Let's get started. This script took me hours. Please listen to it. Okay, I think I can feel the pitchforks already. Hear me out. I promise I have something good here. Trigger warning though, this video will contain discussions of SA, CA, murder, and most of all, incest. Woo! Although if you clicked on this video, you probably already know that. Viewer discretion is advised either way. The Dollenganger Saga refers to a collection of 4 books released between 1979 and 1984 by author V.C. Andrews. Y'all, this book series is as old as my mother. My grandmother was probably reading it while my infant mother was sleeping or something. Anyways, the saga in order is Flowers in the Attic, Petals on the Wind, If There Be Thorns, and Seeds of Yesterday. The saga follows the main character's story, which is framed to be her memoirs, starting before her immense trauma and stops just before her death. As a disclaimer here, I've only read a little bit here and there of Flowers in the Attic. I have watched the Lifetime film saga, I know, hush, and I've listened to many others retellings and recapping of the entire series, including the prequel, and like all the other spin-offs and whatever. I know a lot about this series, and I plan to make a video out of the experience of me reading the series because my mom told me that I should read the books before I make this video, but I didn't have the time. By the way, in case you want to go through the entire series, the YouTuber that I like the most that summarizes the entirety of the saga with each video being one of the books is Korriban Alumni Books. I will have her link in the comments of this video. I will pin it in the comments. So basically, my plan was to go over the entirety of the series, but that's gonna take its own video, and maybe each book will have its own video like Korriban Alumni Books, because I don't have the time for that in this video. I have a feeling this video is going to be very long. So I'm basically only going to summarize the first book and summarize some events of what happens in the next 3 books, because the plot is kind of important, but I see most similarities in Flowers in the Attic. So I want to explain both the Dollenganger series and Love and Deepspace for those who don't know. So if you want to skip all that, timestamp now. Flowers in the Attic is the first book in the series, and it begins in fucking Pennsylvania of all places, because of course it does. We view a picturesque family of very blonde, doll-like children and their attractive parents living their very best lives. Christopher Sr., who I will refer to as Christopher, is a doctor and has done very well for himself. His beautiful wife Corinne stays home with their 4 children and is extremely sociable. Together, the couple have 4 beautiful children, nicknamed by the town as the Dresden Dolls. Christopher Jr., who I will be referring to as Chris, is a bright, academic young man who looks just like his father. Cathy, who is a beautiful young dancer who looks just like her mother and is her father's favorite. And 5-year-old rambunctious twins Corey and Carrie. The family is very close and nothing ever seems to be wrong in their household. That all changes one night when, on the eve of Christopher's birthday, where Corinne and the children put together a surprise party. The police show up and tell the family that Christopher had gotten into an accident. He's dead. We soon learn, along with Chris and Cathy, that Corinne was a happy spender and that the couple were actually deeply in debt because of this. Everything they owned, they didn't actually own. They were being lent. The bank repossesses everything, and before they repossess the house, Corinne tells the two oldest that her parents are still alive, but that her father is dying, and she wants to try and win back her father's love and inherit everything since she is the last living child of the family. Oh, and their names aren't Chris and Cathy Dollenganger. The family name is actually Foxworth, which, now that I think about it, should have kind of tipped them off to something, because usually, you know, at least in the US, you don't take, in Western cultures, you don't take the mother's maiden name. That's what it's called, maiden name. You don't take your mother's last name usually. You take your father's last name. So her say that the family name is actually Foxworth should have tipped them off to something, but I digress. And so they were all off. They board a train which takes them to Virginia, where Foxworth Hall is located, Corinne's family estate. To make an extremely long story short, the four children are taken to a singular room on a vacant wing of the estate, and they're told they can never leave the room, and if they want to play, they must play in the attic. They are told they have to remain locked away because Malcolm, Corinne's father, Malcolm's one rule for her coming home was she couldn't have had any children with Christopher. Corinne told them they would leave once she got her inheritance, and of course her children believed her. It's then that we learn the reason for everything that's happened so far. All of the odd rules, like no males and females bathing together, being in any state of undress, or sleeping in the same bed, are because Christopher and Corinne were uncle and niece. Christopher was Malcolm's half-brother. For 3 years, the four children were locked in that room and then in just the attic, being abused and neglected by their grandmother and their mother. In that time, they were beaten, starved, and abandoned by the adults around them, and this led Cathy and Chris to taking on parental roles for their younger twin siblings. Unfortunately, they'd get lost in those roles. The series is very controversial for the overwhelming amount of incest that revolves around the plot. Because they're locked away during their emerging puberty years, and with literally no one but each other around them, Chris and Cathy end up in an incestuous relationship. Eventually, the siblings are able to escape, minus Corey, who was poisoned by their mother. But they were never truly able to live normal lives. After their traumatic teenhoods locked away from the rest of the world, Chris and Cathy were never able to be normal siblings. They would bounce back and forth from being normal siblings to their incestuous relationship repeatedly. Cathy even had a miscarriage of Chris's baby after they'd left Foxworth Hall, and after the death of the man who took them in from the streets, Chris and Cathy moved from South Carolina to California so they could live as husband and wife with Cathy's 2 children. It's a fucked up story, and I think sometimes it's controversial because a lot of people say it's a romance between siblings when no, the fuck it's not. It's framed as a tragedy and as a gothic horror. We're not supposed to root for Cathy and Chris's relationship. We're supposed to witness it develop as a result of neglect and abuse, then as a psychological tragedy. The brother and sister don't want to be together. They want more than anything to have a normal sibling relationship. It's emotional and psychological torture for them to have this yearning for each other while wanting to be a normal family. And that, I think, is where I want to point out the similarities and differences I see with Caleb and the main character from Love and Deepspace. To make this an agreeable watch time, I'll be focusing strictly on Caleb's branch storyline. Avery, why do you swear that CalebMC's story is similar to the Dollenganger Saga? Well, let me tell you. Caleb and MC have the same kind of relationship problems as Chris and Cathy, including the C-themed names, ayo, but in the exact opposite way. Before I get into it, allow me to explain their story a little bit for those who don't know. If you already know and you don't want to hear the synopsis of Lads so far, skip to here. You have been warned. In the beginning of the story, MC gets a message from a guy named Caleb, who she's obviously very close with. A little bit later, we meet Caleb along with who MC calls Grandma. We learn pretty quickly that Caleb and MC were quote-unquote adopted by Grandma, and that they were raised from around the age of 9 or 10 as siblings with heavy quotations. I know a lot of Love and Deepspace players will yell at me for this, but whether you like it or not, it's the truth, and it's actually pretty important for CalebMC's relationship and what makes them unique. See, while Zane and MC are described as childhood sweethearts, Zane actually wasn't in MC and Caleb's lives for very long before the accident caused by him and him going off to college. Caleb, however, had known MC for a very long time. I don't think we actually know how long they've known each other, but it's implied that they've known each other since they were little. Caleb was always trying to protect and shield MC from the experiments forced upon them by the scientists at Ever. After the Chronorift catastrophe, which happened around the time MC was 7 or 8, Josephine, who they call Grandma, took the two kids in. MC and Caleb were used to be experimented on as children by Ever. MC was targeted because of the ether core in her heart, and I don't remember why Caleb was experimented on, but I think it might be because of his gravity evol, because like Silas's evol, it's very powerful. But like I said earlier, Caleb would try to protect MC from the adults that were torturing them, and it's even stated in the most recent main story update that MC almost died multiple times because of these experiments. We never get any lines from Caleb about how he was feeling or how he dealt with this fact while it was going on, but I'm sure we can all imagine how helpless he felt. This is most likely what developed and spurred on his mental instability, illnesses, and yandere-like tendencies, not to mention his insane overprotectiveness of MC. And after all this, after the Chronorift catastrophe, they're taken in by one of the people who helped torture them, Josephine. I'm sure this made at least Caleb very wary of her intentions. MC is alluded to taking immediately to Josephine as her grandma because she didn't remember much of anything that happened. Probably because she was going in and out of consciousness all the time. Caleb's overprotectiveness and the two's immense need to be near each other after unimaginable trauma is where I find a lot of similarities between them and Chris and Cathy. The other way I find similarities between the two pairs is how society views them and their relationships. Because Chris and Cathy are blood-related siblings, the way they love each other is unnatural and insanely illegal. Their want for each other was forced upon them by severe neglect and abuse. They were pretty much forced to fall in love with each other because of the trauma they suffered together and the parental roles they had to take on for their much younger siblings. When Cathy's second husband dies, which I'll talk about him a lot when I start reading the actual saga, he tells Chris and Cathy to move to a place nobody knows them, be together as husband and wife, and raise Cathy's two children as their own. Therefore, they lived their lives in such a way that they're brother and sister, but pretending not to be related at all, living as a married couple. Opposite of them is Caleb and MC. The two aren't blood related at all, but because of Josephine, the two of them are seen by the society around them as brother and sister. Caleb, although he has feelings for her, is forced to play the big brother role for MC, torturing himself further in the process. This can't have had a good effect on him or his mental state, especially as he was going through puberty. It's not as if it was one-sided either, since through multiple cards we see that MC is insanely possessive over Caleb and would get very jealous of women she suspected of either liking Caleb or girls she thinks Caleb likes. At one point, when Caleb is in college and MC is in high school, relax, they're only 2 years apart, they pretend to be in a relationship on his college campus rather than the siblings society back home sees them as, so boys won't try to date MC and girls won't try to flirt with Caleb. Even though it's an Otome game with multiple love interests, it's very evident that as they were in their teens, the romantic feelings were very mutual. Quick side note, it's been a theory on Twitter recently, on Lad's Twitter recently, that pretty much everyone headcanons Zane as MC's first crush. I headcanon that as well, but I also headcanon that since Zane had to go away for school, her crush on him faded and she, started involving herself more with Caleb. And Caleb was her second big crush, which is why, at least in my opinion, I might be biased, I don't know, which is why in my opinion, Zane and Caleb are very much attached to MC no matter which branch you take. Chris and Cathy had to hide their biological connection to each other in order to live as lovers, while CalebMC have to remind the people around them that they aren't related at all in order to be lovers. It's a similar situation, but on opposite sides of the same coin. Throughout it all, it's trauma that's the deciding factor in both couples' relationships. The two couples are trauma bonded to their other half. There's also something to be said about the fact that Chris is very possessive and protective over Cathy, and Caleb is very possessive and protective over MC. Chris and Caleb share many similarities in my opinion, the only difference being Chris had assaulted Cathy, and Caleb values MC's consent over literally anything else. No matter how in love with her he is, no matter how jealous he gets, he never forces MC to reciprocate his feelings. There's also a big similarity in the locations of the two couples. Hear me out. The most recognizable thing from the Dollenganger Saga, aside from the incest, is the attic where the children were held captive for 3 years. Lads players, do you see where I'm going with this? In Caleb's Bond story, we see Caleb and MC in the attic of their old house, presumably before the explosion, and while MC is still in training for the Hunter Association. A little bit into the story, MC recalls the memory of her getting stuck in the attic for hours, to the point she got scared and cried until Caleb found her and let her out, comforting her. While she tells the story, Caleb looks guilty and he admits that he was the one who locked her in the attic. Why? Protection. MC was being bullied, so Caleb locked her in the attic to keep her hidden away while he went and dealt with the bullies. Then he let her out when he felt it was safe.
When we had just moved here, the bullies and I didn't really get along. And one day they showed up at our doorstep. I was afraid they would try to mess with you, so I made up an excuse to send you to the attic. You'd be safe at least, and not anywhere near them.
What? You actually locked me in the attic on purpose?
Don't get the wrong idea, Pipsqueak. I planned to let you out after I dealt with those guys, but I got carried away. They insisted I become their leader. We were walking around together.
So you decided to play with your new friends while I was locked in the attic?
Well, we ran into a group of kids from across the street. They were looking for trouble, so I took care of them. It got crazy. I couldn't come home.
In other words, Caleb, you locked me in the attic, and then you went off into battle?
This is a direct parallel to the Dollenganger Saga, to the point it had me questioning if the writers of the game did it deliberately. After all, the reason Corinne gave for locking her children away in the attic was to protect them from her father, with the plan to let them out once he had been dealt with. Along with the complicated relationship of CalebMC being societally seen as siblings while they're actually not, it made me think of the Dollengangers immediately. There's also the fact that Caleb wanted to keep MC locked in his apartment to shield her from the far space fleet and to keep her safe forever. His trauma led him to do this, much like it led Cathy to plan the same thing for her children after she and Chris moved to California to live as husband and wife. Cathy set up the attic of their house with 2 beds and a picnic basket like the one their grandmother brought their food in, so if it got out that Chris and Cathy were siblings, she could hide her children away to keep them safe. And you're all going to hate me for this comparison, but during MC confronting Caleb about locking her up, Caleb suddenly becomes very forceful. He doesn't physically harm her, but he does pin her to the couch as he goes on about endurance. He physically restrains her, and whether you like to admit it or not, it's very toxic behavior, and it reminds me of the time Chris confronted Cathy about her kissing Bart Winslow in the first book. The way he confronted her, telling Cathy that she's his, gives off a very similar vibe to the fight between Caleb and MC. The only difference, thankfully, is that Chris went on to assault Cathy, while Caleb does nothing of the sort and would never do anything like that. And here is the distinction between the couples. Caleb and MC's feelings were always a mutual respect. There's the key word, respect. While the two of them may have a fairly toxic idea of possession, it's never truly happened without either's consent. Because in the end, Caleb does understand MC doesn't want to be a caged bird, so he stops locking her in and doesn't lock her up again. At least at the time of writing this, They live fairly normal lives with each other, having understood that neither of them should be locked away by the other. Chris doesn't respect Cathy as a person. Even if he does learn to contain himself, throughout the series he sees Cathy as his possession, not as a person. He tries to stop her moving anywhere without him. He tries to get her to leave every romantic partner she gets, and he even tries to get her to abort one of her children for her health, despite her insisting she wants to have the baby. To me, he doesn't respect Cathy or her boundaries. Caleb absolutely does. Although Caleb obviously has a one-sided rivalry with Zane, he doesn't stop MC from going to see him either in a professional sense or otherwise. He absolutely knows about Silas, even if he doesn't say he does, but all he does is warn MC about the dangers of involving herself with Onikinus, not to make her stop going to the N109 zone. He also most likely knows about Xavier's since he's her partner, and Raphael, but doesn't get involved in her decisions. He lets her live her life. He respects her choices. He never forces himself on her. While I see many similarities and differences between the couples, one thing is completely different. The respect Caleb and MC have for each other is mutual. Whew! That's it, folks. That's my assessment. It took me a very long time to write this script, so I hope y'all enjoyed it. Tell me what you think in the comments below. Did Homecoming Wings also remind you of the Dollenganger series, or am I just insane? Both? Probably. Anyways, I hope everyone enjoyed this video. Tell me your theories and opinions in the comments below. Like this video and share it around, and don't forget to subscribe because I do plan on making many more videos about Love and Deepspace, and I plan on reading the entire original Dollenganger Saga and making videos on each book and each movie made by Lifetime. I also plan on reading My Sweet Audrina, so again, subscribe to eventually see me talk about that. Go follow my socials, all linked in the description. Give Unorthofox a lot of love for making my thumbnails, and stay tuned for an announcement regarding my schedule for when I start streaming on Twitch. Thanks for watching, it means a lot, and I'll see y'all in the next video. Bye! Hi, if you're new here, this is, Jesus Christ, I just got a bunch of shift notifications, oh my god. This is the most unedited part of my video where I just, talk to you guys. How are y'all doing? Great? Great. A lot of stuff has been happening with me. By a lot of stuff that's been happening with me, I actually mean my workplace, because apparently there was a lot of firing and hiring done. I've only been at this place officially a week. It's crazy. Anyways, they're putting everyone through retraining, and it's a whole mess. And I'm not gonna explain it on here because people don't need to know. But just know, it's a whole mess. I went through a little meltdown on Twitter because I had no idea what was happening and nobody was communicating with me. And it's not the fact that nobody was communicating with me. Nobody was communicating. Like at all with anybody. So everyone found out everything at the same time, and it was a whole mess. But everything's fixed now, and I still have a job, and I actually got my first paycheck today. Woo! As I'm recording this on Friday, October 17th. So got my first paycheck. It's great. I finally have money. I can finally stop living off my mother for the most part, even though I still live in her house. Anyways, oh my god, my dogs are going crazy. Can you guys hear them? They're so annoying. I haven't been in a very artsy mood lately because of everything that was happening with work. I was very depressed and I had no motivation, but I have motivation again. So here we are. I'm going to post something soon, I think. And I also really, really want to start streaming, and my mom is completely fine with it. She's like, you can stream while I'm here, or while I'm gone, or whatever. I told her, but you can't come in saying my government name because people don't know my government name, and I'm not gonna tell them. And you can't be hollering for me and shit. So, and she's like, yeah, fair enough. So, we're gonna start streaming on Twitch soon, very, 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 very soon. So, please go follow my Twitch because I'll be gaming and stuff on there. Most likely drawing a lot on my time off, just so I can get some money in between working. So, I really appreciate you guys' support, and I really appreciate my friend Unorthofox for, making my thumbnails. So thanks for everything. This is the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it. Seriously, tell me what you think, because I really want to make more videos about this stuff. I really want to make like in-depth analyses that will take me a really long time, that are much more professionally done. This is also the first time I'm adding like clips into the video. I even downloaded Love and Deepspace on my tablet, and I hope it'll work because I want to like do everything like myself, you know, so I don't have to like go online and get it or whatever. Stay tuned for that. Stay tuned for a lot of good videos. I'm spending all of Sunday, I think, planning my next 3 videos for next month. I'll just plan a month ahead. Alright, well, that's all I want to say for now, I guess. Bye!